Hi everyone, I'm Melissa. Today I'm gonna present our workbook summary of chapter 6. And the chapter is about second part of logical fallacies. In this chapter, we will discuss fallacies of insufficient evidence, mistakes in reasoning in which the premises, though relevant to the conclusion, fail to offer sufficient evidence for the conclusion. We will discuss 9 such fallacies. If you are ready, let's start it. The first fallacy is inappropriate appeal to authority. The fallacy of inappropriate appeal to authority is committed when an arguer cites a witness or authority who there is good reason to believe is unreliable, but when in general, is it reasonable to believe that a witness or an authority is unreliable? Let's look at some of reliability of a source. First one, is the source not an authority on the subject at issue? What does it mean? Let's look. The most obvious way to commit the fallacy of inappropriate appeal to authority is to appeal to a person who is not a real authority on the subject at issue. The other one is the accuracy of the source's observations questionable. A source can also be unreliable if we have reason to doubt the accuracy of his or her observations or experiences. The other one is the claim highly improbable on its face. The more improbable a claim is in itself, the less willing we should be to acknowledge it merely on the say-so of a witness or an authority. And there is an example. Let's look. Old Doug Perkins says he has an 80-year-old friend who can run a 100-yard dash in less than 10 seconds. Old Doug is one of the most trusted members of this community, so if Old Doug says he has an 80-year-old friend who can run a 100-yard dash in less than 10 seconds, I, for one, believe him. And the other one, appeal to ignorance. This fallacy occurs when an arguer asserts that a claim must be true because no one has proven it false. Conversely, a claim must be false because no one has proven it true. It looks like this. X is false because it cannot be proven that it's true, or X is true because it cannot be proven that it's false. And there's an example. Not a single report of flying saucer has ever been authenticated. Therefore, flying saucer don't exist. And there is a video about this fallacy. Let's watch. That's it. And the other fallacy, false alternatives. This fallacy occurs when an arguer poses a false either or choice. Let's look at the example. Student, I'm not sure if I want to become a doctor, but I also don't want to be stuck in a low-paying job my whole life. It's a tough decision. First parent, you have two choices. Either you become a doctor or you end up destitute and unhappy. It's your future, but you have to pick one. And second parent, I disagree. You don't have to become a doctor to have a successful and fulfilling life. You can explore other well-paying careers like engineering or computer science, we can say. And the other fallacy, loaded question. It occurs when an arguer asks a question that includes an unfair or unwarranted presupposition. And there is an example. Let's look. Suppose a political candidate is participating in a debate. and their opponent asks the following loaded question. Opponent, given your history of financial misconduct, how can the voters trust you with their hard-earned money? In this example, the question assumes that the candidate has a history of financial misconduct, which may not be true. And there is a video about loaded question. Let's watch.
I'm not going to say it again. Where is your sister? I don't know, but she brought my record player for 2 years without asking. What does that mean? Dear Lionel, I need to use your record player. I will give it back in 10 days or less. Do not tell Mom or Jackie. I will replace the batteries when I return. Signed, Susie Bishop. Well, how are you? Does it concern you that your daughter's just run away from home?
That's a loaded question.
Come down and read this.
That's it. And the other fallacy, questionable cause, when an arguer claims without adequate evidence that one thing is the cause of something else, he commits the fallacy of questionable cause. There are three common varieties of questionable cause, and first one is the post hoc fallacy. It's committed when an arguer assumes without adequate evidence that because one event A occurred before another event B, it's the cause of B. Let's look example. A tennis player won 2 games in a row and also happened to eat chicken the night before each game. From then on, he decides to eat chicken before he games because it seems to cause him to win. And the other one, mere correlation fallacy. It occurs when an arguer assumes without sufficient evidence that because A and B regularly occur together, A must be the cause of B or vice versa. And there is an example. Let's look. Every 52 years, the Aztecs would sacrifice tens of thousands of prisoners to the sun god to avoid the earth coming to the end. The earth never did come to an end. Therefore, sacrificing thousands to the sun god has prevented the end of the world. And the other one, oversimplified cause fallacy. It happens when we assume without adequate evidence that A is the sole cause of B, when actually there are several causes of B. Let's look example. The quality of education in our grade and high schools has been declining for years. Clearly, teachers don't care enough and just aren't doing their job these days, we can say. And the other, hasty generalization. We commit the fallacy of hasty generalization when we draw a general conclusion from a sample that is biased or too small. And there's example, my friend has been eating only hamburger, pizza, and fries for 10 years, and he has no health issues. Therefore, fast food is not unhealthy for you. And there is a video about hasty generalization. Let's watch. That's the example. Let's move. And the other fallacy, slippery slope. We mostly hear arguments of this type. We can't allow A because A will lead to B and B will lead to C, and we sure as heck don't want C. Arguments from this kind are named slippery slope. We commit this fallacy when we claim without adequate sufficient that a seemingly harmless action, if we taken, will lead to a disastrous outcome. In other words, argues an action will lead to chain of events resulting in undesirable and extreme consequences. And there is the example, dear professor, if I fail this class, my life will spiral out of control. I will end up with homeless and have to beg for change. It will ruin my chances of going to medical school. So if you fail me, I will have to live in a tent and people will die and it will all be your fault, you can say. And there is picture, you can see. Let's move. The other weak analogy. It happens when an arguer compares two or more things that are not really comparable in relevant respect. It looks like this. It's relevantly similar to example Y. P follows from X, therefore P follows from Y. And weak analogy occur in many different forms, but three patterns are particularly common. First one, compare two things. It's to compare two things that have several identified similarities. And let's look example. Alan is tall, dark, and handsome and has blue eyes. Bill is also tall, dark, and handsome. Therefore, Bill probably has blue eyes too. The other one, comparison of several things. It's a comparison of several things that have only or two identified similarities. Let's look example. Jake is a member of the Wexford College Football Fanatics and he goes bare-chested to all the home football games. Kylie is a member of the Wexford College Football Fanatics and he goes bare-chested to all the home football games. Brad is a member of Wexford College Football Fanatics and he goes bare-chested to all the home football games. Jennifer is also a member of the Wexford College Football Fanatics, so she probably goes bare-chested to home football games too, I can say. And the other one, assert without further elaboration. It's that two cases are relevantly similar. Let's look example. Why does a family who has no children in a school district have to pay school taxes? This is like paying cigarette taxes even though you don't smoke. Let's move. And the other one, fallacy inconsistency. The fallacy of inconsistency happens when an arguer asserts inconsistent or contradictory claims. And there is an example, let's look. I'm not a racist. Some of my friends are white, but I just don't think that white women love their babies as much as our women do. Yeah. And that's the end of my presentation. Thanks for listening.